Ukraine and Russia. Two countries and populations that are since ages linked to each other, whether in terms of geography, culture, economy, or diplomacy. Indeed, the relation between the two countries claims their oldest heritage from Kievan Rus, a polity which took place in the 9th century and that united most of the East Slavic Orthodox states. Then, during the 18th century, most of the current Ukrainian territory was incorporated into the Russian Empire. So, and then after this, what happened?
Then Ukraine will have to wait all along the 19th century until February 1917, the revolution, to obtain its first complete autonomy, which will last a few years up to the creation of the USSR in 1922, where the two countries will be reunited again. And then all along the 20th century until 1991, the two countries will be together. After the dislocation of the USSR, Ukraine will gain its independence definitely.
And since then, the bilateral relation between Russia and Ukraine will become more and more complex. We can first of all notice some economical conflicts that started at the beginning of the 21st century that were linked to the price and the exploitation of gas coming from Russia. To concretize these first disputes, in 2014 the Russian-Ukrainian War started, which opposed the Ukrainians to rebel Ukrainians pro-Russian who were supported by Russia itself. A long conflict that started with what we call the Ukrainian Revolution of Dignity, which was against the government's choice to get closer to Russia instead of Europe, and that still didn't end by getting even worse with the start in February 2022 of the Ukrainian invasion by Russia.
Принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
This conflict we can all observe today led to a massive migratory wave with more than 6 million Ukrainian refugees around the world in 2024. Now the question is, where do they go and how do they adapt themselves?
Today more than 6 million Ukrainians are spread around the world, mostly in Central and Western Europe. And at a national level, the neighboring countries such as Germany and Poland are those who welcome most refugees in numbers.
Ironically, in the world this time, Russia is the country that welcomes the most migrants with Germany, since it's also a neighboring country and for all this historical relation I mentioned just before. However, Russia stays a minority host region compared to Europe, who hosts almost 4 times more refugees than Russia. This difference in the choice of the final destination between these two regions can be explained by, of course, the fact that Russia is now more and more an enemy, but this difference in the migratory flows is actually a change in trend that dates back several years already. In fact, the 21st century is marked by a profound change in the nature of these migratory flows. The Ukrainian migrants have been progressively breaking off with the traditional Russian migratory wave, and have been more and more considering European countries, especially after 2014 with the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war. The massive change in the migratory flows since the beginning of the Russian aggression of the 24th of February 2022 reflects even more this new trend of the Ukrainian population and government that are resolutely looking towards Europe and who are breaking their historical bilateral relation. Once arrived in those countries, the immigrants face challenges that can change and be more extreme depending on their local situation. But in any case, their objective is to assure their survival and their integration, which means that they need a place to live, they need to learn approximately the language of the host country, they need a job, they need to get some medical services, whether it's for psychological or physical reasons. Then for the younger migrants, they need to be guaranteed an access to school, and maybe a legal guardianship in the most extreme cases. So those are the needs. Now these needs must be met. And this is the role of the host countries, and so in a big majority the role of the EU. For now, the EU, to start, is officially standing with Ukraine and assures the refugees a temporary protection in which they have access to all the rights that will make possible their challenges. So they will be allowed, for example, to join the labor market, to have a right of residence, or to have an access to the educational system of the concerned countries. Then, in terms of main concrete actions, the EU and EU countries give a lot of money to Ukraine and her population since the beginning of their aggression, in order, for example, to support the Ukrainian army, to support financially, economically, and humanitarian the country and inhabitants, or even in order to guarantee the host of the migrants in the member countries. Of course, even with these measures, many problems persist, especially in terms of rapidity and efficiency in the administrative systems, plagued by the huge amount of migrants arriving in certain countries such as Germany. However, these problems are not surprising since the war wasn't really predictable. But these problems, of course, need to be solved as fast as possible, with the war continuing more than ever in 2025. And one of the main ways to solve these problems is probably just to listen even more to Ukraine and the population in order to know all the specific needs, identify the problems, and find the solutions. More than ever during the conflict, solidarity is the key, leaving no place for discord.